I'm fascinated by the Sal Mineo murder case. I've been to that area where he was killed, where his apartments were there, just off Sunset Boulevard on Holloway. People that have been to if you know LA, people, if you've ever been to like Barney's Beanery, that's kind of down the street from where he was. He is like right behind Sunset Plaza section of Sunset Strip, and it was a row of apartments. And then behind the apartments, there was carport area, but it was kind of like a back alley. It was off the street. So if you wanted to rob somebody, it was a good place to find someone and have them isolated. And that is what happened. And Sal Mineo was an actor, probably most famous for being in Rebel Without a Cause, starring alongside James Dean in that movie, and ironically gets killed at the end of the movie.
Right. He was in Exodus and a number of other movies.
Yeah. So he was stabbed to death in a botched robbery attempt. Behind his apartment after parking his car one night. So what do you remember from that?
Well, I remember I was sent down to the morgue to collect some evidence off of his remains, and I saw him dead. It's kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah. I don't remember if I found anything of any consequence. That particular case is an example of police who wind up having tunnel vision.
Right.
They decided that because Sal Mineo was gay, that the crime had something to do with his sexual proclivities.
And from their perspective, he had shady characters coming in and out of his apartment, and also his wallet wasn't taken. So they thought, it wasn't a robbery then.
So they focused in on that notion for a few years. And
this was a personal thing.
It got them nowhere. And then what happened was the district attorney, and this is no mystery, DAs need to clear cases as best they can. They like to play, let's make a deal. If you are charged with something and you can give us some useful information, we'll go easier on you. And that's what happened. A guy came forward and he says to the DA, I know what happened in the Sal Mineo murder case. And if you go easy on me, I'll be happy to share that information. And that ultimately broke the case because he had some legitimate information about who was involved, and that was it.
Yeah, and the person who had done it, he didn't even realize who he had killed.
That's right.
Until he heard it on the radio that night when he went home. Then he freaked out.
It was just a random street crime.
Yeah.
And
he was looking for someone to stick up, and it's just wrong place, wrong time for Sal Mineo.
Yep. But that was I've lectured about that all over the place, and I tell
because of the tunnel vision with the detective.
Right, because I tell people that when you are investigating a case, if you're from the lab's perspective and you come up with some information and then you want to take that and draw some inference from that, you need to be careful that bias, some sort of bias, even if it's unintended bias, might creep in to your decision making. And take a breath and consider alternatives to how something may have occurred.
Right. Yeah, it could be a cultural bias that you don't even realize you have as an investigator.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges is people in my business oftentimes work in law enforcement. So you're dealing with police investigators all the time, and oftentimes it's the same investigators. So you develop a camaraderie, in some cases you may be socializing with them. And so when the police come down and they say, we're pretty sure this is the right guy, and here's some evidence, and we would like you to demonstrate that to us, that's a whole that presents all kinds of issues, because did that information that the detective gave you seep into your subconscious and cause you to act in some kind of unintended bias fashion? So it's a challenge.
So how can that affect, because you're dealing with science, so how can that still affect someone in a lab?
Well, I'll give you the one of the most famous cases dealing with DNA evidence. This is an FBI case, the Madrid train bombing case. There was this terrorist incident in Madrid, and the Spanish police found a plastic bag where the explosives had been kept, and there was a fingerprint, a partial fingerprint on the bag. And through Interpol, they sent it all over the world to see if anybody could identify this particular case. So it comes to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia, and the investigators are really, eager. We're the FBI. We're going to solve this case, and they do an evaluation, and they find a print that kind of sort of matches. Turns out to be this guy, Brandon Mayfield, in, I think it was in Oregon. He happened to be an attorney who was a convert to Islam, and he had been defending Muslim people for crimes. And they say, my God, this is it. We got him. So they send the information back. In the meanwhile, the Spanish police identify somebody else, and the FBI was wrong. And it turned out they did a fairly exhaustive study about what happened and it was that the investigators who brought the evidence down were kind of hovering over the fingerprint examiner's shoulder, kind of, I don't know if egging him on is the right term, but cheering him on. Boy, it'd be great if we could solve this case.
Pressuring him a little bit, sure.
And it turned out it wasn't the right guy.
Wow.
And that was a clear case of bias, because it was a fact that the pressure that the investigators were bringing to the examiner caused this mishap. Eventually they had to apologize to the guy, and they came up with some nice financial settlement for their oops.
Wow.